these wheels are quite tight, so you've got to kind of bash the tyre to get it to release. And while we're on that subject, I'll put some anti-seize on this rotor, because the other side was very tight. So hang on. Right, we've got our basic tools here, so we're going to need I think it's going to be 13 or 14. 13. Yep, 13 mil. Okay, so I'm just going to use my mallet, hold my finger on and crack those off. And as you can see, this whole thing here is spinning, so I'm going to have to use long nose pliers. That's why I use copper coat or some sort of anti-seizing compound, because this doesn't happen. So we're going to replace the rotors, going to inspect the pads and clean up the caliper sliders and put new caliper slider grease in. So that's actually tight because it's got Loctite on it, which, you know, you don't normally do that. I don't normally do that with. So I want to get this in here. Just give it a bit of a tap. So yeah, that's why this is tight, because it's got Loctite on it. Shouldn't need to, you know, as long as you tighten everything up properly, shouldn't need to put Loctite on it. Right, give the caliper itself a bit of a wiggle and an angle to try and get the piston to retract just a fraction. As I'll twist it, see? Gets looser. Make sure you don't overflow your reservoir in there, and then just that slides out the way. So we're going to collapse this piston because we're putting new rotors in. I usually use slip jaws. Just take it so that it goes flush, like so. That's what you need to do. Just hang this over the side here carefully without ripping the line out. Now we want to take these brake shoes off. There's plenty of meat on them, as you can see. Plenty of meat. So I'm just going to take them out. And I'm going to give them a bit of a rough up, because they look like they've got metal or impregnated in those linings, so that's all going to come off. And then we're going to put in a bit more anti-seize. Now we're going to take this caliper retainer off. It's a 15 mil, I think. Could be 14, 15. Okay, so you got one bolt there and one bolt there. I use copper mallets because it doesn't damage anything. Can use a ratchet, of course, a socket set. because we're going to be taking these sliders out and re-lubricating all of that. You don't want to be blowing any air lines in here or anything like that, because the brake dust, unless you're wearing a mask of course and eye protection, because the old brake dust doesn't do too good for your lungs. Older vehicles especially, because they've got asbestos in them, and we all know what that causes. Okay, so we'll just get that off. So we want to clean up this surface here on both sides, top and bottom, because that's where the actual, a little bit of friction happens in here, and if it's got gunk in there, which it has, it can cause the brakes to judder and stuff because it's not releasing properly. Just on, I guess you guys probably already know that, but just in case some of you that don't, that can cause juddering. And the other thing that can cause juddering is an out of round rotor, or improperly lined up on the hub, because sometimes they get a bit of crud on the hub, and people bolt it on and they wonder why it's juddering, because the rotor's going like this. That's exaggerated, but you know, high speed, so when you put your foot on the brake it goes like that, and that's what causes it a lot of the times. But a lot of it's these pins in here dry, and the caliper can't float properly and equalise. So there's quite a few issues that can happen. So that's the caliper, or the disc retainer. So you pull these out by, you've got to be careful with these too, not to tear the rubber boot, and also each side's different. So that's dry as dry can be in there. That's just shocking. So that's going to be all cleaned up. That's really dry. That's not good, by the way. It shouldn't be dry like that. And this one here, there's a rubber seal on this one. Don't mix these up, because you won't be able to get this one and this one and this one and this one. So we'll put that aside for now. As you can see, the disc rotor is rock solid, so I've got to get brutal with it. It can take a bit to get off these things. I first of all thought it was these studs, but no, it's not. Okay, it's starting to come now. That's it. Okay, so that's been on there a while. So that's been actually ground a couple of times by the looks of this. It's reasonably, you know, worn, but it's actually, you can feel a lip in there with your finger. And so I'd say it's been ground, because doing 200,000 Ks, there's no way that that'll look that good. Usually people run the brakes down, the linings down till they hit the steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some emery cloth, and I'm going to clean up this face here, and also this little surface in here, so that the new rotor can go on. Alright, if you couldn't see that, this face here, and I'm going to take emery tape and get this face here, and then we'll put the new rotor back on. Okay, so just get your emery cloth. Okay, that's cleaned up that face. Now we're just going to do the bottom half. some brake clean in there. Okay, then I'm just going to use a little bit of emery cloth and just give it a little bit of a wipe off between all the studs. Like I said, if you get any blemishes in here or rust film or anything like that, it'll hold it off true, and you'll get a out of round effect, and that can cause a lot of juddering issues. So I'll just continue with that, get it done, and get ready for and give it a spray and get ready to put the rotor on. Right, before we put the new rotor on, we want to make sure that it's the right one. So I'll show you how to do that. I know I've shown on the rear brake side, but I'll do the same for this so you don't have to watch two videos. Right, so we want to make sure that we've okay, you can see there's a film on here that's some like machining oil, and that's to stop corrosion while it's sitting in storage. We need to get all that off, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But first of all, what we need to do is check the inside diameter, which is 165, and that's 165. The overall, you want the height, check the height here, which is 25, and that was 25. And the overall diameter is 300. That one's 300. And then the rotor thickness, you'll see the difference here. See this rotor here, this one's been ground a lot on this side and not so much on that side. So that can cause a weakness. So that's 23. And that's 24, so it's 1 mil different. But you can see that they've ground this unevenly. I can see it. This side here is narrower than this face, so they haven't even machined it the same amount, so it's obviously ground a whole heap, roughed up a whole heap on that side. So I've put some brake cleaner on here. So what we want to do is give it a bit of a soak with some brake clean here. You don't want to get any of this oil on your discs themselves, the brake material. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I don't know if you've even seen any of that, so I've just sprayed this rotor here, and that'll evaporate off. So I'll put this on. Oh, the other thing you need to do is obviously check your stud patterns match. Obviously this one does. Okay, so that goes on nice and smooth, and let's give that a bit of a spray just to get the crap off. Right, that'll all come off. Right, so what I'm going to do now is these here, I'm going to give these a bit of a scuff up with a bit of emery cloth just to rough them up a little bit, because it could be full of like little filings of metal. If I can find it, here it is. Tear a bit of off. That's good, a lot better. See, there's a lot of filings in this one. just want to try and get them out. You can even see some of them coming off on my hand there. Okay, just give these ends a bit of a sand so that it makes it nice and a lot easier for it to go back together. And then we'll get some caliper grease and we'll put some caliper grease on this. I mean, obviously if these were even a little bit dodgy, I would have replaced them, because there's plenty of meat left on these. Okay, right, so get the caliper housing. Okay, they're done. And we're going to do the same thing in these grooves here. I'm just going to clean them up. Make sure you don't mix those up again, like I said before. Okay, right, I'll get some caliper grease and we'll re-grease these sliders, because man, that is sticky as, because you want